Welcome to another daily cinephile vlog. It's finally in theaters, The Whale. I thought I would talk about it since it finally hit our local theaters. The Whale is, of course, the big comeback for Brendan Fraser, so that was the biggest reason that I really wanted to see this movie. He is great in the movie. It's a performance that is done with a lot of prosthetics, as I'm sure people have seen the trailer or even the poster, and they know that he is a 600-pound man in the movie, so a lot of prosthetics are used. This is a movie where Brendan Fraser is the character. Like, you don't see Brendan Fraser anymore. You really do just see him as this character. But he also has to bring a lot of acting to it. They don't do a whole lot of prosthetics to the face. They're not covering him in makeup. The prosthetics are on his body, but he's still having to give a performance in order to embody this character. And he does a great job. The Whale exists in a world that has a very negative mindset. In a way, I think it's kind of realistic in that aspect. I think this is very true to the nature of people. I think the movie is trying to push a very optimistic perspective or an optimistic view of the world, even in the depths of all this negativity. And that comes from Brendan Fraser's character, who throughout the movie is very optimistic and is praising his daughter, someone he's been estranged from for many years and doesn't have a relationship with. She is just an awful person. Sadie Sink plays the daughter, and I think it's a very realistic portrayal of a teenager. I'm like, yeah, there's some teenagers who have this kind of mentality, who act like this. It's going to be disturbing for a lot of people, the way that she talks and the things that she does. And I don't know if some people are going to get lost in the messaging, the way that Brendan Fraser tries to twist her actions and turn it into acts of kindness rather than acts of hate or acts of causing malicious intent. He doesn't see it that way. And I think the ending tries to justify his optimism. And I think that's my biggest problem with the movie, is that the ending is a little bit too unrealistic for what the rest of the movie was. Maybe some people will read into it and try to give me a different perspective of what that ending was trying to do, but for me, it was the only part of the movie that I didn't find too believable, and I didn't think in this moment his daughter was going to do what she did. I really believe if they were going to keep it realistic, they would have stayed true to her character and what she did, but still ride that idea of optimism in the face of abundant, widespread, horrible negativity is not always going to be rewarded. You know, just because you're an optimistic character, I don't think you're going to get a good ending like this character did. But I'm only fitting that into what this film is portraying up until this point, given how the events go. I think there's going to be a lot of people reading into the symbolism of the movie. There's a lot of monologues throughout, focused on religion and the relationships between the characters and some of their backstories. A lot of that stuff is really good, but the dialogue I don't really think is all that great. It seemed very obvious that this was based on a play. I didn't feel like this movie had a wide variety of shooting style and or shot sequences, and some of the blocking even was, I could see it working in a play, but for what this movie is, it just doesn't offer enough variety to really make what's happening on screen very interesting. And like I said, though, the dialogue doesn't help. The dialogue is not all that great. I was feeling like the movie was being a little preachy at times in some of the worst ways. And I think some people would say, well, the movie's meant to feel claustrophobic. That's why there's not a wide variety in the way that the movie is shot. But, and I think it's trying to be claustrophobic. I think that's why they chose to go for a different aspect ratio. They don't do the traditional widescreen aspect ratio. They do a 4:3, the Academy ratio. That's what they use. So I think that's trying to be make the film feel claustrophobic. But to me, Darren Aronofsky, if you've seen Mother, you think he would have done something with the actual effects of the movie, or like on the set, to make it more claustrophobic or make the film feel claustrophobic as we go on. But I don't feel like there's anything intentional with trying to make this apartment more claustrophobic. I think it just feels like it's shot like a play. It really does feel like something that's on the stage. And maybe the play is fantastic, but for what I'm seeing right now, I was not too impressed with any of the technical aspects of the movie. I think the score, also the music, is very odd. It sometimes is almost used horrifically for scenes that I'm not sure if this is tonally fitting with your movie. The only reason to see this movie is because of Brendan Fraser. Hong Chow is great in it as a supporting character. She actually adds a lot of humor to the movie, and Brendan Fraser is allowed to be funny at times as well. So as much as the movie's depressing, it also does have some levity to it. I think Sadie Sink is great. I think a lot of people are going to hate that character, but it's like, hey, that is how some teenagers act. A scene between Brendan Fraser and the ex-wife that I think is maybe the best scene of the movie. And then there's, of course, Ty Simpkins. It's just nice to see him again. I don't know the last time I've actually seen him in the movie. I know he was just a second in Avengers Endgame, but I don't feel like I've seen him since then. Overall, I think I would give The Whale 3 out of 5 stars. Maybe I would go for 3.5, but I feel like I'm not gonna come back to this movie. Overall, I enjoyed it, but it's not something that the messaging of it all. And I mean, I'm a guy that's all about spreading optimism, having optimism in the face of negativity. But even I have to admit that the ending was a little bit too ridiculous and didn't fit well with what the rest of the movie was.